What's good? How was y'all doing today? We finna be reacting to and seeing the explanation of the Behelit, I believe is how you say it, from Berserk. First and foremost, fuck Griffith. You're a straight bitch. You always be a bitch, my nigga, you know what I'm saying? Um Gus is, you know what I'm saying, he need to end your shit. For real talk, on my life. You a straight bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, I hate this nigga with my goddamn soul, bro. Like, nigga's a straight fucking bitch on my life. Nigga, weirdo on some shit. But yeah, we finna be seeing, you know what I'm saying, that ugly ass goddamn necklace he had around his fucking neck, type shit. That just, I guess that shit just protected his ass, you know what I'm saying? But without further ado, we finna hop to the video. Appreciate y'all for watching. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. And let's hop right to the bit.
How is it going, everybody? Too Spooky here. In this video today, we're going to be explaining and discussing the various Behelit in Berserk. I recently finished
Nigga wanna
reading
be
the
ass
Berserk manga.
astronaut like
It was
shit.
beyond
Big ass
amazing.
helmet.
But after completing the story, I found myself a bit confused about what exactly the Behelit were, and how they worked. So I
Behelit.
decided to make this video here, to not
Thought it was
only
a
give
Behelit.
myself a better understanding
I
on
guess
how they
Behelit,
work,
whatever the
but
fuck.
perhaps also make things a little bit easier to understand for you guys as well. I should warn you ahead of time that this video will of course contain
Bro, look at
some
my
major
favorite MC,
spoilers, so
bro.
if you have not yet finished Berserk,
Oh yeah, bro. Nigga, if y'all have not watched Berserk, I ain't gonna cap, bro. Nigga, watch that shit. Don't watch that shit around your parent. Nigga, watch that shit by yourself, bro. That's all I'm gonna say on some shit. Do not watch that shit by your parents. Nigga, on the big TV, nigga. Watch this on your phone, fam. If you do watch it on your TV, lock your door, my nigga. Type shit, real talk.
please click away from this video. And I might also leave a few tiny details out here and there, but I am going to try my absolute best to cover everything we currently know about them. Because you also need to keep in mind that these egg-faced objects, or creatures even, are still shrouded in mystery even after almost 30 years. So unfortunately, no matter how hard I try, it's just simply not possible for me to give you all the answers. Anyways, without further ado, let's begin. The Behelit, also known as the Behelit, is an egg-shaped supernatural object with
ugly as
various
shit.
facial features in different places throughout the object, giving it a sort of abstract appearance. Having different facial features also makes the object appear to be living. It's unknown for sure if these objects are in fact living creatures or something else entirely. The vast majority of the time, the Behelit remains very dormant, making virtually no movement whatsoever. But on occasion, it has been seen to open up its eyes or mouth, which leads me to believe it is some sort of living creature or something similar at least. According to Puck, the Behelit in his and Guts' possession also eats cheese, which is its favorite food. So these objects are also apparently capable of eating. So yeah, that's a thing. The Behelit's main purpose is to summon the God Hand. And before we go any further than that, I need to quickly explain causality. To put it simply, causality is the law of cause and effect in the world of Berserk. It is described as a force, one which governs every individual's place and purpose in the world. Or to put it differently, in the world of Berserk, everything that happens in this world is caused by an endless chain of events that can, in theory, not be stopped, or essentially events that have been planned very far ahead of time by some higher power, or perhaps even the idea of evil. Meaning that because these events have been planned ahead of time, everything that happens in the world of Berserk is leading up to those specific events, which leads to more cause and therefore more effect in an endless, unbreakable cycle. However, although these events are seemingly unstoppable due to causality, not everything is set in stone, and certain events can be altered slightly.
Nigga, fake ass wanna
This
be
is mainly
Batman,
where Guts
nigga.
comes into play,
Real talk.
as he was able to deny his
Wish
fate
suit,
as a
nigga.
sacrifice and fight his way out of the eclipse with Casca, although this was seemingly only possible due to the Skull Knight's intervention, meaning that these two surviving is a way to show us that not every little detail is set in place, or even if everything is supposed to be set in place originally, it is possible to slightly alter fate. And that's essentially why Guts is called the Struggler. Because throughout his entire journey, he is constantly trying to break causality by altering the events that are destined to take place. Guts simply surviving is proof of that. However, altering the way things are supposed to be also creates unpredictable effects, once again bringing us back to cause and therefore effect. Causality is a bit of a complex subject, but hopefully that made it slightly easier to understand, I hope. But the main reason causality is so important with this particular subject is because the Behelit themselves are essentially tools in this endless cycle of causality, and they play a very important role in making these destined events happen. We currently don't know where the Behelit come from, but it was mentioned to potentially be from some sort of higher power, which could potentially be the idea of evil, or maybe even something greater than that. However, regardless of where they came from, every Behelit is predestined to belong to a specific person, meaning that no matter what happens down the line, every Behelit will eventually make their way into that specific person's hands in their time of great desire. Even if they were to have previously tossed it in the trash decades prior, in their time of great desire, the Behelit will somehow find them, showing us that these mysterious objects are indeed a physical tool of fate. Now, like I mentioned before, the purpose of the Behelit are to summon the God Hand, which is done by the Behelit somehow creating an interstice, which is essentially an overlapping area of the physical and astral worlds. It's not exactly known what triggers the activation of a Behelit, but the common factor involves the chosen individual being in a state of extreme desire for something, whether that be the will to live while on the verge of death, or perhaps something even greater. But somehow through this desire, this summons the God Hand, who are then willing to grant the chosen individual one wish, in turn also making them an inhuman apostle. The only requirement for this wish is for the individual to provide a sacrifice, which is generally defined as something that is a part of their humanity, something that is so dear to the user that losing it is essentially revoking the individual's own soul. After the sacrifice is branded, the individual's wish is then granted, and after that they get to live their new rebirth as an apostle, doing whatever they so choose. As we saw back during the Black Swordsman arc, it is possible for an individual to use their Behelit to summon the God Hand more than once, and are therefore able to be granted more than one wish for yet another sacrifice. However, as we also saw, if a sacrifice is not given, the individual who summoned the God Hand is then drugged down into the vortex of souls for all eternity.
Damn.
I should also mention that this may only be the case for someone who is already an apostle, as apostles are currently the only beings that are shown to be absorbed by this vortex upon death, along with those branded for sacrifice. So for instance, if someone were to summon the God Hand for the very first time with a Behelit and not have their wish granted, it's likely they would instead just be transported back to the physical world instead of being dragged into the vortex. But at the same time, this is just speculation and we don't know for sure, so take that with a grain of salt. Something I also wanted to mention is that it seems Behelits can be owned by more than one person, but not at the same time. What I mean by this is currently Guts is in possession of a Behelit that was previously owned and used by Slug Baron. However, because Slug Baron is now dead, it means that this particular Behelit no longer belongs to him and is now destined to be in the hands of a new specific owner, who is likely not Guts himself. Meaning that Guts is more or less acting as a transport of destiny to get this Behelit to its new rightful owner, even though he's not really intending to do so. Showing us that Behelits have likely been used by various people throughout their existence as their rightful owners come and go. Now before we move on to the next aspect of the video, I feel like it's also important to mention that there is of course
The
many
CGI was
different
fucking
Behelits in
ass, bro.
existence,
I ain't
as
gonna
there are
cap.
also
Shit
many
was so
different
fucking
apostles.
garbage.
The exact number isn't known,
But I
of
still
course,
watched it
but
'cause
it's not
shit.
just a small handful or
Story
anything like
is
that.
peak.
It's also unknown for
Plot
sure if
peak.
these Behelits
Peak.
come in different colors, aside from the Crimson Behelit we'll be talking
Some
about
of these
next.
bitch ass
But
niggas.
in general, they have been depicted as a blue, olive, and green color, although which colors are actually correct are unknown. I also failed to mention this earlier, but once a Behelit is activated, the different facial features scattered around the object will twist and contort until they are shaped like a normal human face. The Behelit will then cry blood and scream before the interstance is formed and the God Hand are summoned. But with all that general information out of the way, let's move on to the most important Behelit, the Egg of the King. The Egg of the King, or more commonly known as the Crimson Behelit, is the most important and potentially most powerful Behelit in existence. The Crimson Behelit appears the same as the other Behelit, however instead clad with the trademark crimson color to make it stand out from the rest. Like the rest, the Crimson Behelit is also subject to causality, except this particular Behelit is a huge requirement for events that are destined to happen. In particular, the eclipse, which only occurs once every 216 years. This particular event is where a destined future member of the God Hand is present with the Crimson Behelit, where they are then required to make a much larger sacrifice to relinquish their humanity completely and become a member of the God Hand. In Griffith's case, the thing he cared about the most, and the thing that made him most human, were the various members of the Band of the Hawk, and sacrificing them was truly sacrificing his soul and humanity to the core, in turn allowing him to become the fifth member of the God Hand. It should also be noted that each of the other members of the God Hand became what they are through the use of a Crimson Behelit during the events of an eclipse that happens every 216 years. It's unknown if all 5 of them used the same exact Crimson Behelit, or if there were different ones throughout time, but regardless, each member of the God Hand became what they are through a Crimson Behelit, just like Griffith. Next up, we need to discuss the Egg of the Perfect World, which although isn't a Behelit itself, is something very close, and therefore something related to the topic at hand. Instead of calling it the Egg of the Perfect World constantly, I'm just going to refer to it from here on out as the Behelit Apostle. The Behelit Apostle is actually a very unique and crucial part of the events to come.
What is this, bro? This shit look... Ain't this the shit that, what's the name? It had made this face like there, and then it opened his eyes, and it had his mouth open. Bro, this shit ugly as hell. Whoever made this shit, nigga, stop graphic designing, my nigga.
And of the events fated to happen. What's most unique about the Behelit Apostle is the fact that it is both an apostle and a sacrifice at the same time. Like we mentioned earlier, a sacrifice is required for a wish to be granted, and therefore without a sacrifice, there can be no wish. Well, in the Behelit Apostle's case, before they actually became an apostle, they were nothing, in every aspect of the word. They were born deformed, with no family or friends, not even a name, simply known as nobody. Due to his deformed appearance, he was outcast by anyone who saw him, forcing him to stay as far away from people as possible, which to therefore keep away, he dug himself a hole in the ground to stay away from everyone. Due to the massive amount of bodies piling up from the plague, the people of Albion began throwing the dead bodies in nobody's hole, not knowing that there was actually someone down there. And after countless bodies piling up higher and higher, nobody was eventually crushed to his last breath. Well, as things were fated to be, at one point previous to these events, nobody happened to find a Behelit in the trash, which upon nobody's last breath, was activated and the God Hand were of course summoned. Due to the fact that nobody had literally nothing to sacrifice as he never had anything he loved, or any loved ones, he was instead opted to sacrifice himself, and the world in its current state for the powers of an apostle. Considering he despised the world as it was now for essentially burying him, it was less like a sacrifice and more like a necessity for the birth of a new and better world. Little would he know, Griffith was just coming to make it worse. Regardless though, much like a Behelit, once it was finally time for the fated incarnation ceremony, the Behelit Apostle's warped facial features shifted into the shape of a normal human face, before crying blood and giving birth to one of the God Hand in the physical world, which in this case was Griffith. It should be
Bitch
noted
ass
that
nigga.
similar to the eclipse,
It's
the
crazy.
incarnation ceremony is a fated event of causality that happens only once in 1,000 years, for the purpose of giving one of the god hand a fully physical or tangible body. For such a massive event to happen, a massive sacrifice was of course required, which was essentially everyone in Albion, along with the Behelit apostle's body acting as the egg of the perfect world. So from this whole event, we learned that it is possible for an apostle to essentially act as a Behelit themselves to birth a member of the God Hand into physical existence, along with it being possible for someone to sacrifice themselves along with the entire world in its current state. While this is a fated event that only happens once in a millennia, it's still all part of the Behelit's place in causality once again. The next thing we need to discuss is the Sword of Actuation, which is essentially a sword made entirely out of various Behelit. This was accomplished by the Skull Knight, somehow being able to ingest various Behelit he confiscated from various apostles throughout his journey to stand against the God Hand. While not very much is known about the sword itself at this current point in time, as far as we do know, its abilities are as follows. It essentially has the ability to carve open space and time, even being able to cut directly into the abyss. This also gives it the ability to cut through different locations in the physical realm, allowing the user to essentially travel from one destination to another in a short time, by simply cutting through the fabric of space and time itself. While not its intended ability, the sword was also responsible for helping Griffith merge the physical and astral realms, in turn allowing the rest of the God Hand to manifest in the newly found perfect world.
Fuck. I ain't even finna say nothing, bro.
Along with every other atrocity you could possibly imagine. So although not much is known about this sword currently, it possesses immense power, which is seemingly caused from the various combined Behelit themselves, showing us that these mysterious objects contain a lot more power than we originally could have imagined. And if one slash can literally merge two different planes of existence, it could potentially also do so much more. The final thing we need to quickly talk about is the man-made Behelit, otherwise known as the Reincarnator. This monstrosity was created by Daiba through some unknown method of sewing and chaining still living apostles together into some sort of vat of mysterious liquid, in turn making a literal man-made Behelit. This contraption was generally used to create the Daka, which were some sort of inhuman apostle creatures that were created by submerging pregnant women into the liquid, forcing them to give birth to these inhuman creatures with their lives. Considering at least 10,000 of these Daka were shown to exist, I think we need a moment of silence for all those pregnant women who suffered because of this monstrosity. Thank you. This man-made Behelit was also shown to have even greater power than originally anticipated, as Ganishka was able to submerge his already apostle self into the liquid, in turn transforming himself into a literal skyscraper of an apostle, having so much power that he quickly lost his own sanity. This massive body and power was then of course used by Griffith to merge the two worlds into Fantasia, with the help of the Sword of Actuation like we mentioned earlier. So through some unknown methods, it's also possible to make some sort of Behelit-like creation through the use of already existing apostles, who had likely already used a Behelit before. But to what extent this contraption and an actual Behelit share similarities is something we cannot yet decipher, simply because, like I said earlier, the extent of what the Behelit are capable of is not yet known, so therefore it's impossible to compare the two. But regardless, this man-made Behelit does of course have a similar power, but seemingly without needing to meet with the God Hand to obtain a wish. At this point in the story, that is currently everything we know about the Behelit themselves, and anything that bears a similar resemblance, purpose, or powers to a Behelit. I may have forgotten to mention a few details here and there, but for the most part, I think I've covered it all. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of these mysterious egg-shaped fetishes, and what role they play in the world of Berserk. If I forgot anything, be sure to...
Nah, though. Shit. This was a, you know what I'm saying? It was a very interesting video shit about the bellet, whatever the fuck the shit called type shit. But god damn, this shit But yeah, this was an interesting video and shit. A lot of shit I didn't even fucking know. I didn't even know that. What's that nigga name? The Skull Knight, whatever the fuck. You know what I'm saying? The nigga who saved Gus and shit. He had a sword just made out of billets or whatever type shit. That shit fire. But appreciate y'all for watching. Make sure to leave a like, comment, share, subscribe. Y'all let me know any other videos y'all like to see me do next, and I will see y'all in the next video.